It's here. Got to tune it up to pitch. Hey, I'm Jonathan. Welcome to Rather Be Riffing. And so in my last video, I teased that I had recently acquired something from the Gibson Golden Age era. And it is indeed a 335, a 61 to be exact. And it's currently off for a refret. So in the meantime, we're going to check out this boutique alternative 335 offering from Collings. It's the i-35 LC Vintage. And so in this video, I will talk about the story of how I ended up with this particular guitar, as well as do several sound demonstrations and talk about the specs, both how they differ from a Gibson 335 and how they differ from Collings' standard i-35 offering. So let's dive in. And so what Collings was going for with their vintage spec i-35 LC was a looser and more vintage tone and response. And I'll talk about the specs and choices they've made to achieve that as we go. And up first, let's talk about the electronics. They're using what they call special DiMarzio volume pots along with Lux capacitors. They're 500K pots. I don't know if there's a treble bleed on these. If anyone knows, let me know. But I can say that these are incredibly responsive. It also has custom throwback voiced PAF style pickups, also an incredible dynamic range of these pickups, which I'll showcase as we go. And so up first, I'm going to feature the neck pickup. I'm going to start with tone and volume on 10. You'll see me roll back the volume back to about 8 to clean things up a little bit more. And then I'll kick it back up full throttle at the end for some lead playing. So I ended up with this guitar in a roundabout way. We decided to head to Nashville for a long weekend after the holidays, and we spent quite a bit of time at Carter's Vintage Guitars, and they had an amazing selection of Les Pauls, everything from standard Murphy Labs to multiple Murphy Lab Brazilians. They had other Brazilian runs, including a 2019. They even had a Guilherme 1959 build. And so I got to spend a lot of time sampling various Les Pauls. And I had a few observations. One is, the more Les Pauls I play, the more I realize there's just a beautiful amount of variation, example to example, from neck carves to feel to tone. to the voice of the instrument. And so I think that's what makes them so much fun to chase down and try to find the perfect one. But after playing all these amazing specimens, I came to realize that I didn't really connect with anything more than I've already connected with this particular example, which is the 2024 Murphy Lab Heavy Aged that I featured in my Les Paul Quest series. So that was reassuring. I felt resolution that I have found the perfect Les Paul for me for now. So another thing that I was humbled by in this experience was when your preconceived notions are challenged and being open to that. When I think of all the guitars that I tried that day, the Les Paul that I did connect with the most was the one that I would have never suspected. It was a Collector's Choice Brad Whitford run from 2014. Not on my radar at all, but everything from the neck carve, the weight, and the tone of that particular guitar was really captivating. So that's always something to keep in mind in being open to trying new things. And so building on that point, something really unexpected happened next. I love trying every guitar that I can get my hands on when I'm in these amazing shops. And one of the guitars that I instantly connected with was this Collings I-35. And right from the first note,
Spooks me a little bit.
it felt like it was my guitar, for lack of a better way to describe it. Everything from the neck shape, the weight, the way the guitar resonated, the way it responded to my pick attack, the way the notes jumped off the fingerboard, even just acoustically in the room, was super intriguing. So I decided I needed to explore this guitar more. So the beautiful thing about being at a place like Carter's is they've got so many different guitars to compare as a reference. I was able to compare this I-35 to two others in the same exact spec, as well as a non-vintage variant. And I must say they all sounded killer and they were remarkably consistent. I also got to try it against some 335s. They had an amazing selection of Gibson 335s in the shop as well. So among all those 335 style guitars, this one really stood out to me. And as I was putting this guitar through its paces, Rose made a very astute observation.
It's naturally sort of just becoming a part of you.
So I decided to purchase the guitar. We had it packed up and shipped home. The Collings has some specs in common with the Gibson ES335. They're both laminated maple construction with a solid center block. Same type of control layout, same type of hardware, same style pickups. Same nut width at 1 11/16. Similar medium jumbo style frets. They both come with East Indian rosewood fingerboards. And where they start to differ in spec, Collings comes in a high gloss nitro. And it comes from the factory with some natural weather checking. While Gibson does offer nitro, the non-Murphy Lab has quite a bit of plasticizer in it, whereas the Murphy Lab doesn't, but it has quite a bit of artificial aging to it. What I like about the Collings is there's no artificial aging other than the finish checking. The condition of the guitar is brand new otherwise, which I really enjoy. The finish is very smooth and seems very thin. The neck on the Collings is Honduran mahogany, and the carve, I believe, is inspired more by an early 60s spec. It's a very comfortable neck carve. It's not quite as thin as the slim taper Gibson early 60s, but it's not as thick as a 59 style carve. It's somewhere in between. The body, as you probably have noticed on the Collings, is a bit smaller than a traditional 335, and the input jack is located on the side of the body rather than on top, which I also find to be more convenient and safe. And then lastly, the neck joint is also different on the Collings. I don't know what the technical term is for this style of neck joint, but compared to the typical Gibson neck heel, you can see that the Collings design is a little more seamless and transitions very smoothly from the neck to the body. And it's quite comfortable up high. So up next, I'm going to go to the middle position, and I'm going to start with the volume control of the bridge backed off to about 8.5, the tone backed off to 5. On the neck pickup, I'm going to have the volume backed off to about 8. The tone is going to be on 10. Then I'll play a part that utilizes the full neck of the guitar to see how the guitar sounds and intonates in all registers. So I find that the Collings really plays wonderfully up and down the entire neck. The intonation was flawless all the way up to the highest note on the 22nd fret of the upper E string, all the way down to the open strings and everything in between. As for the setup on this guitar, it came from the factory with the action at around 1.25, 1.5 millimeters on both high and low E strings around the 12th fret. I have since lowered the action. That's my preference. And I'm coming in more around 0.75 millimeters, so I've lowered it substantially. And I was pleasantly surprised that this guitar retained all of its projection, volume, resonance, and tone, despite lowering the action significantly. So just another indication of the quality of build and quality of instrument Collings is making. And so for this next part, I'm going to stay in the middle position. I'm going to put both tones back up to 10. I'm going to balance out both pickups at 8. And I'm going to tack the strings a little closer toward the bridge to just demonstrate some of the different characteristics this guitar can take on depending on your touch. So another thing that really drew me into the Collings was how it resonates and how it sounds acoustically. It has a ton of projection. And it has this percussive quality, like you can just hear it pushing air. It almost has drum-like percussiveness to it, which is pretty inspiring. Now, compared to the other 335 style build I have with me at the moment, very different voices. This is a Thorn Grand Toura. It's an absolutely exceptional build. This guitar sounds also amazing, but it's just a different animal. It's amazing how different 335 style guitars can be, example to example, and based on the builder's particular choices. And Ron has started to build the Grand Touras again. This is part of the original run he did before joining Fender. So if anybody's interested in a comparison between Collings and the Thorn, let me know. So let's move on to the bridge pickup, and I'm going to kick on some medium gain. Up till now, I've been running a lighter gain sound with my Vemram Janray. Now I'm going to kick on the Analog Man King of Tone, and I'm going to be playing with a pick and with my fingers. And pay attention to the way I'm hitting the strings. You can really manipulate the amount of gain just by your touch on this particular guitar, which is quite addicting. 335 style guitars are known for their versatility. Despite looking like an old classic design, they can do much more than just traditional blues and jazz. We all remember what Clapton did with this, the Cream Farewell concert. These guitars can really rock and scream, and I think that's where they get the Burst Killer moniker from. So let's kick on some high gain and hear what this thing can do. So occasionally I get folks asking to hear the guitar straight into an amp in the room, so happy to oblige. Let's go plug this into my car Telstar combo. I'll have the amp set cleanish just before breakup with a touch of reverb from the amp recorded with my iPhone. So let's check that out. So my overall impressions of the i-35 LC Vintage is that this guitar is an absolute keeper. If you've been in the market for a boutique 335, you've probably read the forums and glowing reviews. Folks say these things are not only an incredible build quality, but they're on par with some of the greatest Gibson examples ever made. And while we'll get more to the bottom of that in the future, I'll do some comparisons to my vintage 61 335. I do think it's a bit of a different animal with its own vibe, but it does stand heavily on the shoulders of some of the best vintage examples. So I find the guitar to be impeccably built. It plays flawlessly. It's incredibly resonant. There's so many seemingly infinite tonal variations just by manipulating the very responsive tone and volume controls, blending different sounds with both pickups. The guitar is extremely touch sensitive and responsive and dynamic. And it sounds great clean, it sounds great rocking out. It is an all-around super versatile guitar. It's no wonder some folks refer to 335s as burst killers. I don't know how I feel about that, but we can for sure do some future videos exploring that myth where I can compare any of these 335 style guitars, the Thorn, the Collings, or the vintage 61 up against a traditional Les Paul and see how they vary. I also might be able to get in a Murphy Lab example of the 61 to compare against the vintage example. So a lot of exciting stuff to come on the 335 road ahead. Let me know what you'd be most interested in. Let me know what some of your favorite tones were in this video. If you're a 335 player, let me know what your favorite make, model, and year is. And let me know what you're most excited to see next in this series. In the meantime, take care, and I will see you in the next video.